So you're going to spend 4 hours on Zwift, or you're going to be in the rain in Vancouver?
Rain in Vancouver.
You're a crazy person.
You're tired, you're dirty, you've been dirty for 8 hours and you're just finally having a shower. The level from junior to U23/elite was like night and day. I basically just hung on as long as I could. Up until that point, my experience in France had been mostly filled with 50th and 60th and DNF. Looking at the motorbike beside you, holding up the placard, and it says, a minute 30, and you look at your Garmin, Wahoo, whatever, it's 80K to go, and you kind of,
you're like, what am I doing?
There's no chance. The team is a huge aspect of cycling, and I think we all really like it because of that.
Canada's back in pro cycling.
Yeah, Canada's on a roll right now.
We have, now I'm going to say, another good friend of mine, Eric Inkster. We went on a ride. Well, I went on a bike ride. Eric went on a Sunday cruise. He is UCI. Now it's Pro Conti?
No, it's Continental. I'm UCI Continental.
Okay, yeah. UCI Continental. You're racing for X Speed United this season.
Yeah.
Super excited. Thank you for being here, Eric.
Oh, for sure. Happy to be here.
I so appreciate it. So, right off the bat, I want to get into it for people who don't understand, because like I said before we started even, if you love cycling and you watch cycling every day on TV, you still probably don't understand the structure of how riders go from junior racers into World Tour and then showing up at a Grand Tour race. So take us through that journey, and where are you at in that journey? Yeah, so
I mean, a lot of juniors, typically, at least in Canada, because that's more what I'm familiar with. It's really important somewhere in there to go and get some European experience, I'd say, and then from there they can maybe find, say, a club team or something as they progress into U23, and then hopefully with some better results by the end of their U23 years, maybe a Continental team. And then if they get some results there, they go either to a Pro Continental team or a World Tour team.
Okay. Amazing, but it's not that easy, obviously, Eric, and especially for Canadians, right? You started with, I believe, TAG.
Yeah.
And that was your club team. Yeah. And they helped you and progressed you over into the next level. But it's not easy. It's more than results, I guess. Hey.
Yeah, I mean, it's results. It's a little bit of, I'd say, where you're from, and other things. But yeah, for me, I went I went to France as a junior. I had one of my director sportifs there, David. He put me in touch with a French DN1 team called GSE Blagnac. And, for I think it was my second year U23, I really wanted to go back to Europe. So I sent off a whole bunch of emails, probably about 150.
It's wild.
And then I think one of the last ones I sent was to this French team, and that's where I basically did my first full year in Europe.
Take us through what it was like with TAG, because in Canada I'm sure you were doing fantastic, and for your own mental state you were probably like, okay, I'm a good rider. Yeah. I'm Canadian. I can make that next step. But I guess it's not as easy. I've heard from other ex-pros or people who are in the industry that you go to Europe and you get punched in the gut pretty hard in those first races.
When I started with TAG, that was my first year as a U23, and it was actually the COVID year. So I think I did about 3 races with TAG before the season was more or less done in Canada. And then I think even in that year they did a French stage race in September or something, but I didn't go because of an injury. So really with TAG I only did a few races, but I knew for 2021 that I wanted to go back to Europe, and I knew I had to send off a lot of emails to do so.
Yeah. So what was the first European race for you?
Well, I mean, I raced as a junior, a little bit over there.
So you kind of got the flavor of European racing.
Yeah, I got a very, very brief sort of exposure to see what it was like, but I mean the level from I almost forget about it a little bit, because the level from junior to U23/elite was night and day.
But like, what does that mean for us? Like, because I'm a rider. Like, yeah, whatever. I do some like local racing and racing in Canada. But is it not only just the fitness, but it's like the aggressiveness of the racing? Are people like bumping elbows like you watch kind of crit racing in the U.S.?
With junior, at least, I mean, it was still, we were all still kids. We were still in school.
Yeah.
We were, even in France, where they take it very, very seriously. We were all young. I mean, the races were shorter. It was just easier. But
So shorter would be like what, 60, 80K?
yeah, between 80 and maybe 120
Okay.
for a junior race,
Yeah.
somewhere around there, if I recall correctly. And then, but getting into sort of the U23 and elite category in France, which is kind of where I started off in Europe, you're racing maybe against 28-year-olds, 29-year-olds, and these guys have been racing for a long time. They're quite strong often, and for the first bit, you definitely get your teeth kicked in. But I think it's not that you can usually make something of it if you can get your teeth kicked in, but sort of stay there.
Yeah, and what was like you did a few of the races in Europe and you got the exposure, but then was the strategy and the mental strategy for you then different? Like, I'm not going to sit in as much in a race, or because you're like, I want to say like a breakaway guy, like you sit in breakaways.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd say for my first year, I basically just hung on as long as I could in most races. I think I got into a breakaway maybe a couple of times. One of them was a really good experience. It was in Nations Cup in France. So I got in there with a German guy and a Belgian guy, and we were out front for like 100K, and that was a really big confidence booster, because up until that point, my experience in France had been mostly filled with 50ths and 60ths and DNFs or et cetera, and then to have a little bit of a confidence boost at that point in the season was great. And then I think after that I got a couple of tenths or something like that, and a third, which was my first podium in Europe, albeit it was a pretty small race, but it was it was nice nonetheless.
Doesn't matter, right? It like validates the journey perhaps for you. And I think mental health plays such a big part in cycling, and like you have to keep that going as much as you keep the fitness going.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
I have to admit, no one's going to want to even hear about this, but I thought of you because I was in the chase group at the Fondo this year.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, okay, if this group's not going, I'm going to break away. And I was like, okay, I just have to be Eric for another 15 minutes and make it to the end. And like, yeah, the like rush you get for being in a breakaway is pretty special. So
yeah.
So you get that, right? Like you're like, I'm
sure.
in the breakaway. We can do this. Yeah.
Yeah, no, the breakaways are really exhilarating. They're quite fun.
Yeah.
Oftentimes you're sitting out there and you're kind of looking at the motorbike beside you, holding up the placard, and it says, a minute 30, and you look at your Garmin, Wahoo, whatever, it's 80K to go, and you kind of,
you're like, what am I doing?
There's no chance, but sometimes. I guess miracles happen.
Did they happen? We see it at the World Tour level. I'm sure it happens at the Conti level too. But okay, take me through, like, because I hear horror stories even from the World Cup side, the World Tour side. Tell me the good, the ugly, the bad. What is that like on the Conti side?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like mixed experiences, but I at the end of the day, I love it all. I mean, I think now I look back at the season and I say, man, even some of the crazy stuff, I look back at it with a smile, but probably sort of with the bad and the ugly, I'd say, like, we had an experience where we were racing 2 stage races in Bulgaria.
Yeah.
And we finished up, and we had a super long drive to the next stage race, which was in the, I guess, south part of the Czech Republic or Czechia. we got started at like maybe 6 p.m. and then we had to stop over in Belgrade, the capital of Serbia, and we got there at like 2:30 a.m. checking into some guy's Airbnb as like a stop, midway
Crazy.
through the drive, and you're tired, you're dirty, you've been dirty for 8 hours, and you're just finally having a shower or something. I mean, you can do the best you can to clean up after the race, but it's never quite the same as having a nice warm shower. So there's that.
And then, like, what's nutrition like? Like, you hear about it as, like, someone who's just, like, casually into racing here, and you're like, oh, yeah, rest. You got to dial your nutrition in.
Mm-hmm.
So we all have this fantasy that you guys on the Conti side or the pro side are like, okay, it's all dialed in, like, the macros and what have you.
A lot of it is just it's how you choose to eat. I mean,
interesting.
There's no for us at least, there's no like team nutritionist telling us anything. So a lot of guys will just probably do what personally works for them. I mean, it's certainly something I think about, but it feels like you never quite get it right. There's always something that you can do better, or there's something to improve, or there's something to try differently. And I don't think I've really settled on or found some, nutrition strategy or anything that I stand by wholeheartedly and can say that I will for the rest of my days because, it just works or something.
So then I guess like the interesting question then, Eric, is like if you one day hopefully go that pro level and everything then becomes, oh, we have a nutritionist, you have to eat like this. This is your plan every single day. Are you going to be like, okay, I'm into this, or are you personally going to have a hard time with it?
I think I'm into this. I like, one thing I really like about the lifestyle actually is just the sort of the focus, the dialing everything in. Like I do actually try my best to dial in my nutrition and to think about it and to plan ahead, etc. And to train and to really think about every 15 minutes of training and what does it do and etc. But no, I think if I ever made that step, I think I'd embrace it. I'd love it.
Are you a Training Peaks guy?
I am.
Do you have your whole history? Like I talked to some people, like I have 10 years of Training Peaks. I can see every single.
Yes and no. I have some of it, but also my coach and I, we actually, and it's a brilliant thing. We go off Excel. So I have like an Excel spreadsheet that dates back to like 2020 or 2019 or something, and I can you can flip back to any date and really like you can read your report of the day. You can see what your sleep was, what your weight was at the time, and you can, how you felt and whatever, right? And it's actually a really good insight into the past.
I can just imagine when you're racing, you're like, what is the, like, it's like your fitness will be like minus 400 or something, like minus 70 on your recovery or whatever.
Yeah, there's been a few of those this year. I think sometimes when you have those back-to-back stage races and if you're one for listening to the Training Peaks numbers, it's it's shocking.
Let's switch it up a little. I've heard the stories now, and this is not even my generation, right? Like 2 generations ago, like cycling used to be like very, I don't even want to say like poisonous. Like the culture was tough. Like you hear like the stories about Cipollini and like, throwing water balls at people's heads. Like you can't go in the breakaway. Today is like, we got to keep the peloton back, right? Yeah. So I think the one good thing in this generation of riding is like, you have like Tade and like Matthew Van Der Poel, and I think they give way more permission for the sport to be creative and wild and fun, while I don't know, that Lance Armstrong era, it wasn't like that. Like if that best rider was like no breakaways today, like somehow everyone listened, which I don't think is the case anymore.
Yeah, there's not really anyone now, I think, that's sort of like the head honcho or the head guy, if you will, of the peloton. I mean, there's 20 head guys. I mean, so it's a different era for sure.
Do you ever have those moments in racing, maybe you haven't had it yet, where like your director of sportif is like, okay, you're not doing this today, but you feel fantastic, so you want to go into the break? And
for sure. Yeah, for sure. I mean, this year we had some races where we had a lot of the guys. We all put our personal goals ahead behind for the sake of the team. You know,
Yeah.
we went to some races in Bulgaria. We had a really good sprinter there, Red Walters.
Yeah.
He ended up picking up one stage win and one second, and you know, a lot of the time it was just keeping everyone following each other and working together. And you know, in my case, I did a lead out. I led this guy out into the final 300 meters or so. Practically risked my own life because there was like a median with the second to last corner.
Yeah,
and
you got the road traffic. Yeah.
yeah, like I almost went into it.
Yeah, the road
like
furniture.
at
Yeah.
like 60, but
Perfect.
I did survive because I'm here
Okay.
today.
Yeah.
But Red went through it, and then he rounded the final corner in second, and came second, which was, I think, the team's first UCI podium.
Amazing.
And you know, on that particular day, we had a guy, Jonah, who was in the break. When Jonah got caught, I asked one of my teammates, "Oh, you know, should I maybe attack now?" And he said, "No. Let's still go with Red. Stick with Red." And so we did. And you know, after the finish, it was really rewarding actually to see your hard work go into someone else's podium.
Yeah, I mean, like, surprise, surprise, cycling is a team sport. I
Yeah.
mean, we know this, but, like, I think to the outside world, people still think it's absolutely not a team sport.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
It's so bizarre, right?
Well, and it's really hard for guys, certainly at sort of UCI level, I guess, is to sort of to freewheel and to get results just by themselves. You
Yep.
know, like, you know, you know, to probably to win a sprint, you probably need to be fourth wheel or so with 200 meters to go, something like that. But you know, if you don't have a team to get you there,
Yeah, you're not
oftentimes you're fighting with 50 guys to be anywhere close to that. So, you know, you might end up 20th
Yeah.
with 200 meters to go and come 17th, but that doesn't really get you anywhere. So it's the team is a huge aspect of cycling, and I think we all really like it because of that.
I want to ask you, what's the advice you would give riders like me, right? Like, we race here locally, we do some criterium racing, we do some crazy gravel events. Like, what are the tips and tricks you would tell us that you see people don't do, right?
Ooh, yeah, that's a tough one. But for starters, I would say look at aerodynamics. It's something that I've certainly brushed off a bit in the past.
Interesting. Yeah.
But we're seeing more and more, like, no one's riding bars that are like wider
Yeah,
than
yeah.
40.
You guys are
and-
all like 38s with
Yeah.
the like complete flare and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, aerodynamics are a big one. Aero socks even.
Yeah.
That-
You're a big proponent of aero socks. Yeah.
Yeah, now I am actually. I probably at the start of the year I was not so much, but we actually have a guy on the team who does lots of aerodynamics testing, and
Cool.
he's really gotten us all on board and thinking about how we make ourselves more aero and just the watts that are to be saved.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So that's a big one to
Yeah.
think about. But then tell me about gear, right? Like you probably are exposed to it on Instagram and you're exposed to it because you're in the bicycle world,
Yeah.
right? Like you're seeing brand new bikes. Everything's like, 15 to 20K. Does it matter, Eric?
I think
Like, can you get away with being an amazing racer with like a mechanical Ultegra with like a older carbon frame and some alloy wheels?
I think it depends how amazing a racer. Like a lot.
Yeah.
What I've kind of found is like a lot of the guys we'll race against from the maybe the first three guys are in a different world, but say from 4th until 50th.
Yeah.
There's maybe only 4 to 6% separating them. So it's finding little things that can push you up a couple of places.
Yeah.
So I do think the gear matters. It's probably not what I want to believe, but I do think it matters for sure. But I also think there's a lot of things that you can do to become physically better yourself.
In so many ways.
In so many ways.
I see the way you train compared to how others train, and that's going to give you that 5% edge to be better
Yeah.
when you're actually sitting there on racing.
Yeah.
So Okay, I want to get into one subject that I always struggle with too, with junior racing, and I see your journey and what you guys go through. Tell me about the like VO2 max tests and the like physiological testing that happens for you guys. Is it good or bad for the sport? Because I just think to myself, if I was like 16 years old, love cycling, love racing, and then I like show up to this physiological test, and then some research doctor from the Heart and Lung Institute's like, yeah, you're good, but you're never going to go pro because your VO2 is like, 23 liters per second or whatever.
Right. It's a tough one. I don't know if it's good or bad.
Do you like doing it?
I've never actually done one.
Really?
No. Yeah.
Maybe that's a good thing, hey?
Maybe. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, if I went in and saw a great figure, would I be, would that give me some motivation? Or if I saw a terrible figure, would that give me some, I don't know, some reason to stop? I don't know. I just, it's just something that I've never done. I've never gotten around to it or had an opportunity to.
Okay, we'll hook it up. So I did it because I work at St. Paul's Hospital. So I did it with the Heart and Lung Institute, and they put basically they do it at a different like scientific level than I think what normal athletes experience, but they put 2 tubes down your throat into your lungs, so it's the most horrific experience.
Jeez.
They put like this like numbing gel onto the tubes, and then they make you drink water very slowly as the doctor like puts the tubes into your nose down into your lungs.
Wow.
So the sensors are basically like here.
Wow.
So they measure the size of your lungs, which is super cool. And then they put the mask on, and you sit on a trainer, and then you start, right? You basically do a ramp test all the way till you're maxed out.
With the tube still down your throat.
Yeah, so super uncomfortable. So you have to breathe properly, and they're measuring everything. And it's very weird because, you do ramp tests on Zwift, and they're like, oh yeah, keep going. Yeah. No, you have a scientist there being like, okay, 200 watts, 250. And the steps are very big. I don't know why with VO2 max.
Right.
So I had a really like amazing figure for VO2 max. And funny enough, I left being like, oh my God, I don't train enough. I'm like worthless. I need to like actually do something with this body and this like physiological gift, I'll say. So
yeah.
So we'll hook it up if you want to have 2 tubes down your throat. So yeah, it's gross. It's gross. Testing is terrible. Can you imagine testing it like that?
Yeah.
No, thank you. So where did the love of road come from there? Because it's like, it's rare. I'll say it's rare, honestly, in Canada and like as an athlete.
Yeah. I would say probably for about 10 years now, I've probably watched the sport. And I think when you grow up watching it, you kind of think about it, you dream about it, you say, I'd like to do that. And I guess for me that road cycling was always what I aspired to do.
Yeah. Who did you watch on TV? What was like your memories? Like for me, it was like Contador and him winning tours. Like,
I think probably the first live tour I remember like watching on the TV was 2014.
Yeah.
I remember watching like the first stage of the 2014 tour. I think Marcel Kittel would have won it.
Oh, crazy.
So that was a long time ago. Coming up on a decade basically. But yeah, and then 2015 as well. And then since then I've basically watched it full stop.
That's amazing. Yeah. You gotta be a different person to watch road cycling. I truly believe that. So
yeah, maybe. Yeah.
So okay, if you had to pick the Grand Tours, which one do you want to compete in versus which one do you want to watch on TV?
I mean, the Tour de France is probably the biggest of them all. So I find that's probably
the penultimate, right?
Yeah, that's like the pinnacle. Although I find watching the Vuelta on TV is always really exciting. It seems to be like a little less predictable.
Did you watch it this year?
I did.
Did you love watching our Canadians kick ass finally?
Yeah.
I got a lot of pride watching that happen for us, and like it was a good year for Canadian cycling. It's like Allison Jackson and Derek G and like
for sure. It was Riley also won a stage at the Tour de
Yeah,
l'Avenir.
that was crazy to me as well, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, Canada's back in pro
Yeah.
cycling.
Yeah, Canada's on a roll right now.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, so talk to me about Gaston Grand Prix. Wild, hey?
Yeah. It's super nice to race at home. So, it's not often I get to do it
Yeah.
anymore, but it was actually my first gas town. Yeah, really, really great atmosphere.
Yeah.
Tons of fans and supporters.
Okay, tell me what it's actually like riding over those cobbles at full speed.
It's funny, if you were doing cobblestones for the first time
Yeah.
at Gastown, you'd think this is crazy to race over. But I remember sometimes from Belgium when I'd raced over some cobblestones that really shocked me.
Yeah.
Coming to the Gastown cobbles was totally fine. Felt like I was racing on the road.
So
or something.
Action Jackson probably was like whatever.
Yeah.
After Paris-Roubaix.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's awesome. And then yeah, Riley won it, right?
Riley did. Yeah.
Riley, I was so impressive. Like I think you finally saw so for us as locals who follow cycling, we hear Legion a lot and like we watch the like US crit racing scene a ton, and then like you watch the difference in strategy and confidence and like power from guys like you and Riley. Like yeah, you see that difference. No, not to knock Legion and like what they're doing, but it was just interesting to see that, and we don't see it, right?
Yeah, Riley's really fast in a sprint. So
Yeah.
for me, I during the race I was always trying to attack.
Yeah.
And get away for as long as I could. I think I got caught with a couple laps to go and kind of lost my legs after that. And then I kind of watched the sprint happen from afar, but
Yeah.
I saw Riley rocket up the side, and I was pretty confident that he would take the win, knowing just how fast he is.
That's amazing. That's so good. That's so good. Okay, so we're gonna do our like fun speed round.
Okay.
So we call it gear shift.
Okay.
Here. So you gotta be quick. Okay.
Okay.
So like whatever comes in your head first. So I'll go back and forth with basically small ring or the big ring. What are you going for? Okay. So I'll give you two options,
Okay.
hot or not, basically.
Okay.
So here we go. I feel like I know what you're gonna say, but I think this is wildly interesting.
Okay.
Okay. So you're gonna spend 4 hours on Zwift, or you're gonna be in the rain in Vancouver.
Rain in Vancouver.
You're a crazy person. Solo training or a very slow group ride?
Solo training.
That's so crazy. You're out there solo so much of the time. Can you just like tell me why? You don't have training buddies here, I guess, that are at your level.
No, I mean, I have a couple that it's always really good to see and socialize with, but
Yeah.
there's also something quite fun I find about just putting the hammer down by yourself and getting it done. And, I believe it or not, I actually enjoy the bike that much that I can have fun. So
Perfect.
by myself for 3
Solo
or 4 hours.
masochist up Grouse Mountain. I
Yeah.
love it. Okay, white socks, white shoes, or black socks, black shoes?
Ooh,
I've seen both on Instagram from you.
that's a tough one. Probably. I think. I'm gonna
go purist. You know.
I'll go with white shoes, white socks.
Okay,
yeah,
thank
yeah.
you. So that's like 80% of our audience. It's like, oh, thank
Yeah.
God. Canadian crits or stage racing in Europe?
Stage racing in Europe.
Okay, good. A sprint or a 2 hour break?
2 hour break.
Okay. Vanderpool or Derek G? Who do you want to ride with?
I would say Derek G. Yeah.
Yeah.
Met him in Girona. Really nice guy. So.
Oh, yeah. He looks like the smiliest, happiest dude ever. Okay.
Yeah.
Aero wheels or electronic shifting? You only get one advantage.
Aero wheels.
See, per our conversation now. Okay, are you going to do a VO2 max test or are you going to go for a run? That's a cheeky one.
Yeah. Well, based on what I heard about the VO2 max testing methods, maybe not the VO2 one. So,
Do you run?
I don't, but I'm thinking about getting into it.
Is this a fad now with cyclists? Is this like, I'm seeing this now, I'm like, are you guys all betraying us and like running? I see this stuff on Strava. I'm like, what's wrong with you guys?
Yeah, I think it's just, I mean, maybe it's just a little bit of cross training, a little bit of mixing it up, but
yeah.
I mean, there's certainly, I think, benefits to being able to run. Like if you have a really long drive and, you're just getting into the race hotel at like 6 p.m. and the race starts the next day and you haven't ridden, I mean, maybe you just throw on your sneakers and go for a 25, 30-minute jog as, for like like a little bit of activation as opposed to getting on your kit at 6:30
Totally,
p.m.
I get the appeal, right?
Like, yeah.
Yeah, it's like 20 minutes to put on kit in the really nasty weather, or like if it's really, really cold outside.
Yeah. So who knows? Maybe down the road I pick up a bit of running on the side as well.
Okay, so Eric, what's your goals? So X-Speed United this year, you're gonna go back to racing, but like what's the big goal? Is it getting signed by a pro team and going World Tour Pro? Yeah,
for sure. I think it's that, and it's just kind of seeing how far I can go myself. I mean, I don't really have an idea in my head of what the pinnacle is for me yet. I'm just taking it day by day and trying to see how good I can become.
Yeah. See, like, I think you don't know this, but your generation of racer has such a good mental outlook on the sport and training. And like, I asked you this question about goals and you're like, you know what? Like, I'm taking it almost day by day. Right. Mm-hmm. Do you have anywhere where this comes from? Is this friends? Is this family? Is this like growing up in North Van and like having the right people around?
I think it's something that I've kind of found myself through my own trial and error. Is I think in the past I used to set very, very high goals, and that's good. But I found for me it's a lot better to just focus a bit more on the present, and not think so far ahead in the future, like. Mm-hmm. Because it's not really tangible until you sort of get close, and so I think for me I'm thinking more about sort of getting to say step 5 if I'm on step 4, as opposed to thinking about what I'm going to do when I'm on step 10.
Okay, last question.
Okay,
how fast did you go on a bike this year? What was the fastest? Did you hit 100?
I did. I think I hit pretty close, maybe like 99.
How do you do that? I don't get it. Like Seymour, I'll hit like 75 and I'm like, nope, we're not going faster. This is scary.
Yeah, there was like this, I remember it quite clearly now, actually. It was this downhill in Slovakia. We were flying down there, and it was just it was a super steep downhill, and it was a straight line as well.
Yeah.
So no need to brake for any corners. We just went down and came up the other side, and it was like going into like a little valley, but we sure went fast.
Yeah. Sometimes you need the adrenaline. You're in a race, and like if you're in your head too much, sometimes that stuff just doesn't happen. Hey.
Yeah, I think if you actually
stare at your Garmin,
stared at your Garmin and saw 99 as it's happening, and realized if there was a crash right now, what could happen? You maybe wouldn't do it.
Yeah. Someone said to me, descending is like, and falling during a descent is like just jump out of a car on the highway. That's what descending's like. So, look, Eric, thank you for doing this. I so appreciate it. You're such a gentleman. Like, I remember going on a ride with you and, I'm like in my zone 2, 3, and you're like, I'm just like on my brisk, like Sunday stroll. So thank you for being who you are and representing Canada. And it's big for us, and I'm always cheering for you. And I think we all are. So
thank you very much. And thank you for having me
for
my first podcast.
Yeah, there you go. And fist bumps all around. Thank you, Eric.
Thanks for checking out the Super Domestique podcast. Follow us on Instagram or find us at thelastdrop.cc to learn more.